Want to know what this latest film's about? It's about this stuff. Water. It's about something else too. Balance. Know what I mean?
Balance of the environment, the world we all share, and the balance of ships at sea. Ships like yours. Ships about 1,000,000 times bigger than this. This may be a toy, but I tell you something, we're not playing games.
This film is about the way we transport water in the form of ballast across the globe and the dangers, the risks to the environment and to human life that ballast water carries with it. When you and your shipmates tramp across the oceans of the world, you're not alone. You may not know it, but you're carrying with you millions of passengers. Passengers nobody wants. Welcome to the world of ballast water management and sediment control. First, a few facts. Fact 1, ballast, the tons and tons of water we carry under these steel plates. If you're not carrying cargo, ballast water gives your ship weight and stability. Every year, merchant ships move between 3 and 5 billion tonnes of ballast water around the oceans of the world. Ballast water sucked up from Hong Kong gets dumped near San Francisco. Ballast water from San Francisco goes back into the sea near Yokohama. And so on and so on. 5 billion tonnes worth. That's an awful lot of water. Trouble is, it's not just water. It's bugs and plants too. Bugs and plants too small to see that have just one aim. Get somewhere new and start a fresh colony. Take over like new kids on the block. This problem represents one of the 4 biggest threats to the world's oceans. Another fact. Each day, 7,000 different species of animal or plant are carried across the world in the ballast water of merchant shipping. And they ain't just there for the ride. Once they're at the other end, they take over existing marine environments. They spread disease, they clog up waterways, they destroy jobs, and they wreck lives. As a responsible professional seafarer, you're part of the battle against pollution of our shores, of our coastlines. Want to take a closer look at the enemy? Come with me. Here we are. Take a look at this. Here's the enemy, up close and personal. When they first come on board, they're tiny, invisible to the naked eye. You'd never even know they were there, but they can ruin someone's entire day. This is the American comb jelly. Gobbles up something called zooplankton, alters the local food web and upsets the local ecosystem. Responsible, in large measure, for the collapse of Black Sea fisheries a few years back. They're brought over in ballast water from the Americas to the Black, Azov and Caspian Seas. And take a look at this. The Americans call them the European green crab. Carried from Europe to Australia, South Africa, America and Japan. It invades, adapts and takes over. Alters the local rocky shore ecosystem. This little beauty? Cholera.
Homegrown in Bangladesh, exported in ballast water to South America, where more than 1 million people were infected and more than 10,000 died back in 1994. North Pacific sea star, Asian kelp, mitten crab, Black Sea water flea, and the list goes on. So you get the picture? Tiny marine organisms travel across the oceans of the world like unwanted stowaways. They take with them disease and nasty eating habits, and away from their own home, they're bad news. And they travel with you on board your ship on the ballast water you take on board, then dump back into local waters with your ballast. So it matters? You'd better believe it.
The IMO have known about the problem for years. The International Convention for the Control and Management of Ships' Ballast Water was adopted in 2004. And soon, no one's sure just quite when, it will become law. That convention and the law that will follow it will bring more rules, more regulations, and we may not like it, but that's the way it is. Break the law, fail to conform, don't bother to understand what all this means for you, and it could be your job that's on the line. Oops, there you go. Like I said, this film's about balance. Balance of ships at sea, and the balance of industry, international shipping, and the environment.
Once it comes into force, that new convention will apply to all merchant shipping carrying water as transferable ballast. It means that all merchant shipping will have to carry out the planned management of ballast water and the treatment of sediment on all trips. All ships over 400 gross tonnes will need to have those plans backed up by paperwork and supported by a ballast water management certificate. Subject to survey and review, that certificate will be valid for 5 years. Without it, port state control around the world can just turn you away.
Wait a minute. There's got to be a better way, yeah? An easier way? What if all the bugs were filtered out before the voyage started? Then there wouldn't be a problem, right? Why didn't they think of that before?
They did. Think of it before, that is. Trouble is, they haven't found the answer. Not yet. One thing's for sure, it takes more than one of these to make ballast water bug-free. So until they find a way to kill off all the bugs without creating a left-behind problem with the stuff they kill them with, ballast water will remain contaminated with microbes, plants and UAOs. UAOs? Unwanted aquatic organisms. So now you know. All this means, 1. Ships have to take care where they pick up ballast water at the start of any voyage. Some places are a whole lot healthier than others. 2. They have to plan and record what they do with both ballast and sediment with something called a ballast water management plan. Every voyage gets its own unique ballast water management procedure. Why? Because each voyage, each cargo and fuel load is different, unique. 3. On passage, if they can't treat the ballast water, and they can't, not yet anyway, then they have to exchange inshore ballast water for water likely to be less contaminated out in deep ocean.
And they have to keep account of everything they do in one of these. A ballast water record book. Your ballast water management plan, your BWMP, is just another way of making sure your ship stays safe, doesn't pollute this planet of ours, and stays within the law. It also reassures port state control about the quality and standard of ship approaching their shores. Like MARPOL and the ISM code, knowing the rules and your obligations to record what you do when you do it isn't exactly rocket science. Just good seamanship. And we're all into that right? So let's take those 3 points one at a time, break them down. Your ballasting precautions, your ship's ballast water management plan, ballast water exchange out at sea.
From the very start, do it right. There are good and bad places to take up ballast water. Port State can advise, but you don't want very shallow areas where the water is already laden with sediment in suspension or where it will be kicked up by your propellers. You don't want somewhere that's already known as a rich feeding ground for marine organisms or harmful algae growth.
When your ship takes on ballast, it sucks up millions of those tiny marine organisms. So don't make it easy for those bio-invaders, those stowaways, to get on board. Avoid ballasting at night when organisms may rise to the surface, and only take on ballast when absolutely necessary, OK? Next up, your ballast water management plan. When it comes to ballast management, this is your Bible, your ship's ballast water management plan. Its aim? To help your ship comply with Regulation B1 of the new IMO Convention and provide information to any port state about your ship's ballasting procedures as she approaches territorial waters. It's also there to help minimise the risk of harmful transfers and, perhaps most importantly of all, it lays down procedures and details of crew training and safety for everyone on board. On some ship types, ballast water exchange is controlled by one engineer working alone, but not always. On many ships, it's members of the crew who are entrusted with at least part of the operation that can fundamentally alter the trim, the balance of the ship when it's a long, long way from land. What's important is that a named ship's officer take responsibility and ownership of that voyage's ballast water management plan. And remember, each voyage is unique, a one-off. And so too should be the planned procedure of the way in which your ship will handle ballast on each different voyage to reflect different weights and volumes of fuel and cargo. The ballast management plan is there to make sure nothing's forgotten, nothing overlooked, and that everyone knows what they're doing and why. And that no one puts your ship in danger. The ballast water management plan. Its detailed content should be worked out between the master and head office and should be constantly reviewed. It should contain ship's particulars, plans, drawings of the ship's ballast system, lists and/or diagrams of ship's ballast water sampling points, operation of the onboard ballast water management system, description of methods for ballast water management and sediment control, procedures for the disposal of sediments, methods of communication, reporting requirements, safety procedures for ship and crew, operational or safety restrictions, crew training and familiarisation. Something else should be on that list too, the duties of the Ballast Water Management Officer. IMO regulations will require each ship to nominate a Ballast Water Management Officer. It's his job to make sure the Ballast Water Management Plan works and that agreed, thought through onboard procedures about training, safety and the taking on and discharging of ballast water and sediment both at sea and when alongside are followed to the letter.
Remember I told you about plans to treat the bugs in the ballast? Filter them out? Knock them dead with new technology, and they hadn't quite got there yet? Well, it's because they haven't got that cracked that the new convention requires all ships transporting ballast water from point A to point B to change that ballast water out there in deep mid-ocean. Which brings us to part 3, BWE, Ballast Water Exchange.
Until treatment systems are perfected and approved, most merchant ships carrying transferable ballast will be required, by law, to change 95% of the ballast water they carry, with the option to retain ballast on board if local conditions do not permit safe ballast water exchange. They'll have to do that, says the convention, at least 50 and preferably 200 nautical miles from the nearest land in water that's 200 metres deep. Why so far and so deep? Because bioinvaders don't colonise in deep water, and the bugs that are dumped mid-ocean don't survive in water that deep and far from land. So, until someone comes up with a treatment, ballast water exchange is the name of the game.
But changing ballast, the liquid weight that gives an empty ship stability in the middle of the ocean, can be a dangerous game. How dangerous? Take a look at this.
Get the sums wrong, and the results can be catastrophic.
On large vessels like VLCC tankers, for example, you're displacing, shifting, taking on board or dumping over the side more than 100,000 tonnes of water, discharging at a rate of 10,000 tonnes an hour. Now that's huge volumes of water and weight. Screw up the calculations and your ship can become dangerously unstable. Her torsional stresses, shear forces and stability margins way beyond anything factored in by her designers. Which means your ship could suddenly develop the floating characteristics of a brick. Ballast exchange at sea? Dangerous? Just a bit.
For that reason, masters are permitted not to comply with that instruction if, and only if, to do so would, in their judgment, place their ship in jeopardy. Reasons why such an exchange was not carried out, bad weather for example, must be entered in the ballast water record book. The IMO insists on 95% volumetric exchange of ballast water in mid-ocean. There are 3 IMO approved ways in which this can be done. First, by the sequential method. Here, the ballast tank is first emptied, then filled with replacement ballast water. Second, the flow-through method. Here, water is pumped into the ballast tank and allowed to overflow. Pumping through 3 times the tank's volume is considered to meet that 95% target of exchanged water. Third, the dilution method. In this, a constant level of water in the ballast tank is maintained while water is both pumped in at the top and simultaneously discharged from the bottom. Again, 3 times the tank's volume is usually considered sufficient to meet IMO standards.
The International Convention for the Control and Management of Ships' Ballast Water gives captains another option: onboard treatment. Filter out those bio-stowaways with some other IMO-approved treatment system and you can forget about ballast water exchange. Maybe, but not yet. Like I said, the system that works is still a little way over there, over the horizon. But it's coming. It's getting closer, which means that in 10 years' time, ballast water exchange will probably be a thing of the past. Probably because it ain't here until it arrives. Meanwhile, check out national ballast water management requirements. Some countries like Brazil, for example, require evidence of ballast water management now. You and your ship deserve a ballast water management plan that's safe and that works. Take care. Safe sailing. See you around.